Hello, I'm Dr. Kurt Nelson. I'm the Associate Dean and Director of Catholic School Programs for the Fred S. Klipsch Educators College at Marian University in Indianapolis. I'm so glad to be with you today as you're watching this as we discuss low-cost ways to increase enrollment and retention even during a pandemic. My background is all in Catholic schools. Prior to coming to Marian University, I spent over 20 years as a principal, as a president, as a superintendent in Catholic schools. And so I'm excited to share this because I know enrollment is always a concern for our Catholic schools, and particularly, especially in this pandemic year, particularly as budgets are stretched with all of the other things we've had to do with PPE and facility changes, and it's even more critical to boost enrollment at a time when our resources are the most stretched. And I know that's a fact on local level, but also the NCA enrollment data shows that nationwide this is a common occurrence. So I'm glad to be with you. I'm going to be sharing a lot of strategies today that I have implemented myself in schools or that I've seen implemented in schools that are typically ones that don't cost a lot of money. And so that's why I really wanted to spend some time with you in sharing with this. So this is going to be a short video, but because it's short, I also want to create two special tools to be able to help you. So the first one is at the end of this presentation, there's going to be a link to an action planning guide, which is actually a 17-page document that will provide material covered in this presentation. It will cover more ideas. It will include some templates as well. So the second resource is really recognizing that I'm not the only expert on enrollment management. We have a lot of great things going. So I've actually created a Padlet collaboration space for us. Realizing that we're all viewing this asynchronously, created this Padlet collaboration space as an idea bank that can be ongoing. So feel free to contribute your ideas to the conversation. Add your ideas. React to other people's ideas, borrow ideas. I really encourage you to do this. And I know all of the NCEA content will be up and remain up until July 8th. So this Padlet will also remain up at least that long, so that even if you're viewing this presentation in May or June, and you want to check out the Padlet and see what ideas people have added in and get that as well, I'll share this link again at the end of the presentation. So don't worry about trying to get it all down. So I want to caution you a couple things before we get started. One is I talk about low cost, but it doesn't mean it's a low investment. There is time and talent that's required for a lot of these efforts, but I do feel like they really do pay off. I've experienced that myself. So two caveats. One is don't try to do all of it at once. There's a lot of ideas here. Pick a couple of ideas that I think we could run with those and start making some progress, and then maybe in future years you can add some of the other ideas. The second one is don't try to do it all alone. If you're a building principal, you can't possibly do all of this on your own. You need some people to help you. If you're a person who really is tasked, maybe you're a person working on a board at enrollment management, or you're a staff member who's helping with that. You can't do it all alone either. So we've got to look at who else has the interest and the passion and the skill to be able to help your school in this particular area. And look around. It may not even be somebody in your school. It may be some parishioners, maybe who have had children in the school in the past, and they've got a little bit of extra time now that they can help you with this. And they can help in terms of giving ideas, but also in helping implement those ideas. So some of these strategies we'll talk about, like follow-up communications, thank yous. That's something that a group of these people can really help implement a lot of those follow-up type things. So they really rely on them and be helpful. So as I go through this, this presentation, we're going to be talking about the enrollment management cycle. And so I think that's really important to start off in looking at this cycle, because if we just start off and say we want to raise enrollment, right? That's a very broad general goal, but it's not really actionable. There's not a lot of specific things you can pinpoint. That's what we're going to try to do. So I'm going to talk about the different phases in enrollment management, so you can be thinking about where is my biggest pain point, where's the biggest barrier or obstacle that we have that we need to work on, and then you can maybe target some of your ideas, target some of your interventions in those specific areas to start with and try to make the most progress. So these categories are, these stages are, first of all, is awareness, which is basically trying to get the word out so that people in your community know about your school, know what you have to offer, that type of thing. So it's kind of your general awareness. Consideration is really the ways that you reach out specifically to parents with children. So awareness is to everybody, parishioners, community members, business owners, donors, all of those things for awareness. Consideration is focusing on the parent of a school-age child that your school serves. What are some things we're going to do to try to reach out and capture their attention, try to explain to them what are some of the benefits of our school, how our school can help them. Engagement is going to be then inviting those parents to take some steps towards your school. I like to think of it as consideration is the school taking steps towards parents. The engagement step is the parents starting to take steps towards the school, whether it's coming to an open house, coming to a tour, coming to a shadow day, trying to get parents to come to you for different events and building that relationship while they're there at those events. So we'll talk about what are some things you can do at that point. Enrollment is obviously what do we do as families and students enter our school. Retention is how do we get them to stay at our school. And then evaluation is always critical in any of these cycles to look back at what we've done and really critically evaluate what's working, how well is it working, what can we do better. So we're going to start with the awareness segment of the enrollment management cycle. And this is really this is the point where your school is going to try to become aware of itself. You're going to become aware of your competitors. You're going to become aware of your parents, your potential parents, and what their needs and desires are. And you also want to make sure that others are becoming more aware of your school. As I mentioned, this is broadly aware. So this is everybody in your community knowing a little bit more about your school. I'm not going to cover a lot in this category simply because a lot of what happens in this category is marketing, advertising, promotions, and those are things that typically do involve an investment of money. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time overall on those, but I do want to hit on a couple of just concept ideas, particularly in this area. First of all is know who you are as a school. What are the things that differentiate your school and make you unique? So you have to know about what other schools offer, what they don't offer, and again, what makes you unique. And then we're going to be talking about how we share, promote, or we could say sell who we are through this whole enrollment management cycle. We're sharing with others. These are the things that make us unique. And the most important part is you have to be who you say you are. Anything that runs contrary to you can put out as many messages about you want as about how we're a welcoming school community, all those things. But if the secretary answering the phone is rude or abrupt with a family, that is a huge brand connect. And parents are going to say, you know, they really aren't what they say they are. They're not going to believe that or not have the trust in that. So that's going to be a huge problem. For a school, a big brand disconnect, obviously, is spelling errors. So make sure you proof and double check things multiple times before they go out to parents, because that's a huge brand disconnect as well. This is also a stage where we want to be aware of other people as well, not just ourselves. And so we want to look at how we compare. Where does our school have value? Are there things that we offer that other schools don't, or maybe they can't? This is a great example of, I've been at several small schools where we couldn't compete with the public school system in just the scope of things they're able to offer, but we could offer some unique field trips and opportunities that a large school could never do. And so what are some things that maybe you can leverage that small size maybe is an advantage in some things, and some of the opportunities you're able to have as well. And so Graham Robertson, who's a marketing professor at the University of Chicago, basically kind of lays out that a brand can either be better, different, or cheaper. He says that's it. If they're not one of those three, they're not around. So better, different, or cheaper. We know, unfortunately, in Catholic schools with families paying tuition, we're never going to be able to compete with public schools on the cheaper factor. That's a non-starter. So we can remove that one. So we've got to find a way to either be better or be different. And so example is, you know, there might be some things that schools offer that you might not be the better than them, but you might be able to portray how you're different. For example, in one school system I worked at, our public schools offered so many AP courses. We could never compete with that in our high school. But we had worked out more dual credit courses where students automatically got transcript credit without having to pass an AP exam. So we were able to promote that. We promoted, hey, we've got this many hours of students that students automatically get college credit for because our instructors have already been certified as college level. The materials have already been certified as college level by the universities. So we were able to pivot that to make it what made us different, even though we couldn't compete directly on AP courses. A little bit on website, and I know this can sometimes involve some expense, but this is a really critical piece. Making sure you have a top quality website. This is really for prospective parents. Design it that way. You might have a page that has links and things for current parents, but it really should be, what is a prospective parent going to look at when they come and look at this? This is where all parents are going before they start looking, as they start to look at schools. So it's really critical to have this website. Make sure it's updated regularly in some way. We also are finding now most internet traffic is on mobile devices. So making sure that your website translates well to if somebody opens it on a smartphone or iPad. This website's really important. I'm going to talk a minute about if families are moving into your area, or I've heard military families say, as soon as we get our orders to relocate in the military, the first thing the mom does is go to the website and look at schools, look for schools. So again, even before they physically get to your area, a lot of families are looking at websites as a primary one as well. The other one I'll mention as well, I've talked to realtors as well who've said the same thing. Before parents even come to us to start looking at houses, they've already looked at schools and they know exactly where they want to buy a house because of the schools. So again, that website is really a critical piece in there. The NCA and Fatica did a great market research study, and one of the things they looked at were what are the considerations that parents are looking for. So there's a website audit, and there's a tool in the action planning guide that'll help you go through your website and look at what are the most critical drivers for parents and how well does your school reflect those on your website. In consideration, a couple of things to think about. One is looking at your feeder schools, and a lot of people will call them partner schools. One of the things is if you work with other schools and they provide some overlap between your program grades and their program grades, one of the things that I have found really successful is to create some customized brochures or information that leaves out the information where you overlap. For instance, if you work with daycares and preschools or Montessori schools, and you go down to preschool as well, if I go to that Montessori school, and let's say they go up to grade 2, I'm going to take our regular brochure and I'm going to just tweak a little bit, or a flyer, and I'm going to tweak the flyer so it really covers grades 3 through 8 if I'm elementary school. And what I'm conveying to that school, that partner school, is saying, look, I'm not trying to steal your students, but your students at 2nd grade have to go somewhere else for 3rd grade. So let me provide this resource just to help parents when they get to the next step in their educational journey with their child. And then they've got material to share that shows what parents can do from grades 3 through 8. So it's a great way to not overlap with what they're doing. I've also done the same thing where we've had a K through 12 school system and then small parish schools near us that only went up through 5th grade. Again, all of our marketing materials we ever sent them were only middle school and high school. Again, we were not trying to steal any students from an elementary parish school, but we said, when they're finished with your school, we want to partner with you for them to continue their faith development in our schools in middle school and high school. So again, not trying to steal, but kind of really working in complement with them. The other thing is also think about how your image is portrayed. That one of the things the NCA Fatica survey found was that parents are very savvy. And they take school decisions very seriously. They really do weigh a lot of factors. So I really suggest that all of your marketing materials really reflect the fact that you know that you're asking parents to make a significant investment in your school. It might be a significant financial investment of time, all of those things. And so, you know, having kind of cutesy cartoons and you know, cute fonts might be appropriate for a classroom things that a teacher sends out. But in your marketing materials that go to prospective parents, those are not the images you want to convey. You want to convey a sense of professionalism, that this school is a solid investment. We're going to continue to move your child forward, and not to look too cutesy. In terms of messaging, some things you want to think about. This is one of the great phrases that I heard that I think really describes this is you want to focus on the buying, not the selling. That's a sales term, but what you want to do is focus on the parent's enrollment decision, not all the things your school has to offer. And if you kind of approach this with that shift in perspective, you'll realize you're not really selling a product, you're selling a solution, because every parent has a problem of where they're going to send their child to school. That's a common problem they all have. So what you want to do though is focus on what are the things the parent needs to hear to help them solve that problem. What are they looking for? So rather than all the things I want to tell you about, oh, this you know, this STEM lab or this program or this new textbook series we got. Parents don't care about a textbook series. Those types of things those are things we might want to say or tell as a school, but I really need to focus on the buying end, focus on the parent's perspective, not focus on what I want to tell them. And part of that process is also making an emotional connection. And so another marketing term is if you win the heart, the mind will follow. And so thinking about how you connect with parents on an emotional level, because the reality is once anybody, and this is a family or anybody, once they've been hooked emotionally on the value of something, they will be motivated to overcome any other logical barriers. So once a family has decided, oh my gosh, this is an amazing school, I can see my kid here at this school, I've got to get him here. They will overcome almost anything, whether it's cost, distance, whatever. If they aren't hooked emotionally, they just say, well, gosh, it has really good academics, but they're not hooked emotionally, then they're going to use those other things as a barrier. Well, they have really good academics, but they're really more expensive than the public school honors program. Or they have really good academics, but they're a lot farther away than this other school. So you want to be able to hook them emotionally, not just logically in that. And so some of the ways you can do that certainly are using photos and stories of individual students and parents. So rather than talking about your students as a whole, tell a story. Tell a story about a student who was really engaged in a project, or really went on to the next level, maybe went on to high school and did amazing things in high school because of the preparation he'd had in your elementary and middle school. Use photos of individuals and those sort of things. And so instead of doing the group shots, some of the most impactful shots are one-on-one or 2 or 3 students, as opposed to trying to capture a whole class activity in one big shot. So that helps you make it personal, and when it's personal, families can start to picture their child in that position, in that story, and it becomes much more impactful to them. In terms of that, one of the ways that will help with that is thinking about parents in not just a monolithic group, but thinking about what are the different types of parents and what are some of the unique needs that they might have. So I've got a list of different types of families on the right. And as you look at each one, if you kind of think about, like, where are they most likely to hear about your school? What are the biggest things they're looking for? What are their needs? And then maybe what would be some of their concerns about your school? So a couple of these are lumped together for space. So like one, parish families and non-Catholic families are going to have very different needs, right? Your non-Catholic families might wonder, is this school going to try to convert my child or my family? We really don't know anything about Catholic. It seems kind of mysterious to us. And so, whereas a parish family might say, well, I want my kids to be in a place where the values that we're talking about at home and we're learning on Sunday, that they're present with that. So they're going to have different approaches to how they think about those. Parents of preschoolers or students who are getting ready to enter your building will be different maybe than the parents of possible transfer students who maybe have not had a good experience at another school, or maybe, looking at some other options, or maybe they're moving to town. I've got that down. Families that are new to town. What are some of the concerns and things that they're looking for in schools? You'll probably have parents who are in special fields. If they're in the medical or the STEM fields, what are the things that they're going to be looking for? Are they going to be, what types of technology might they want to see in the school, and how might they want to see students using technology as well? Different minority populations, African American families and Hispanic families. Again, I've lumped them together, but they will have 2 different sets of needs and things that they're looking for and weighing in a school. So that's another really important group. One of the things that was really shocking in the NCA and Fatica market research was that they found that of low-income families who lived in school choice states, only 1/3 knew that they lived in a school choice state. So even though we think we get the word out a lot about if you're in a state that has state or a city that has choice programs, we need to continually get that word out and not assume that parents know about those types of programs. And then I mentioned families that are new town, military families. Again, they're going to be looking right away at that because they know they've got a problem. They're relocating and they've got to find a spot for their students. One more that I will just mention on this one as well, and I think it's something to think about, particularly in this pandemic year, is the NCA data sets really reflect that the largest decrease in enrollment this year in Catholic schools was in pre-K students. And so we're seeing, and actually the data is borne out nationwide among public school preschools, among private provider preschools, they're all down. And so one of the things we want to be thinking about is there are a lot of students who maybe stayed home with parents because parents were working from home or because of financial situations. So we're gonna have a lot of students who maybe didn't enter preschool last year who are going to be parents are going to be looking for preschool for this year. or they may be already looking at kindergarten, depending on how old their student was, our child was. And so there's going to be some things that we want to think about that group. What would parents who kept their kids home from preschool this year, are there some specific things that they're going to want to see or need, or we can develop for them? That's going to be another significant market this particular year that we want to be thinking about. All right, I want to talk about engagement in the enrollment management cycle and how we can kind of maximize those opportunities when parents are starting to, we're inviting parents to come to us for events, and we get parents with us for events, and how we can be building on that relationship. So I want to talk about it. In the world of advancement and fundraising, we talk about moves management a lot, which is basically the planning out, okay, what's the next step to try to get somebody to move to in this. And so a couple of things that are good to know for that. One is to make sure you track and record inquiries in kind of a standardized way. And your action planning guide that you'll download has a really nice template for being able to, that you can have right there. So as a family calls on the phone, it's got a spot right where you can jot down information as they're giving it to you. And it kind of guides your questions to the family too. And then you've got those as a one-page sheet for every family that's inquiring. And then also thinking about, how do you build that ongoing relationship with parents? Remember, you're not just asking a family to enroll for this year. You're asking a family to enroll for 4 years if you're a high school person. And you might be asking them to enroll for 9 years if you're in a K through 8 building. That's a significant investment. That's not something you just sell for 1 year. You've got to build a relationship, make families feel that sense of trust and belief in you as a staff, as an administrator, and as your school and your school community. So it's really be thinking about how we build that relationship. And I think one of the nice things about moves management is we're not going to try to leap from they called yesterday to ask some information, and I've got this inquiry written up, and I'm trying to get them to enroll like in a day. Okay, but I can think about in baby steps. How do I get them to take the next step? So if you're the call for an inquiry, how do I invite them to either an open house or to take a tour or schedule a shadow day? And then as they come to one of those, then how do I get them to maybe take the next step? Engage in their interest. So at each step, I'm trying to gauge their interest, and I'm inviting them to the next step. A great example in this pandemic year, I was talking about the preschool and how we address specifically them. Maybe rather than just, a lot of kindergartens will do like a kindergarten roundup. Maybe one thing that a school could offer would be like maybe a kindergarten readiness assessment that's free to anybody. You don't even have to be enrolling in the school. It could be a service to say, hey, we know, this year was kind of crazy with preschools and students, a lot of students weren't able to be in preschool. So we'll come give you a free assessment on kindergarten readiness skills and let you know kind of where your student is, where your child is, and maybe give you some ideas of what you can improve. Again, not tied to enrollment, but it's a way to start building a relationship with prospective parents. You're giving them something that helps them, but you're also starting to build a relationship with them and being of service to them. As you're looking at these different open houses and tours and shadow days and things, I like to try to leverage activities together because a lot of times we try to do open houses or we'll try to do like a tour or something like that. Sometimes you try to do it like in the evening or on a weekend. And let's be honest, your building does not show well empty. Empty buildings just look cavernous and lonely. You want to have families in your building when there's activity. But we typically do evening and weekends because that's when, particularly if it's a transfer student or a student coming from another grade, that's when they can get out of their school. So here's an example of something we did at Aquinas Catholic Schools in Wisconsin. We had an open house that we would host in November on a Sunday, and we would pick the day that our high school musical was going on. Our school system was really well known athletically. We had really strong arts programs as well. So we wanted to show off our arts programs. We knew people saw in the sports page every day how well our athletic teams did, but we wanted them to see what our music and our theater students were doing. That was incredible. So we said, hey, if you come to this open house at this time, you get free admission to the matinee. Again, our building was full of activity because people were there for the musical, and it was lots of things going on. They also got to see our arts programs in action. So it was a great way, and it was also during the day. That's another thing. At night, buildings in the dark really don't show off well. We also want to even think about how do we put out the welcome mat for families. If they're coming for a shadow day, do we send them a confirmation letter that gives them some more details, especially if they've never been to our building before? where do they park? What door do they come in? What can they expect? In your action planning guide, there's a template of a letter that you can send to a confirmation, to a Shadow Day student to confirm their visit. Is there a way you can personalize a parking spot with their name on it? Welcome to, Joey Smith, or something, or the Smith family. That really can show the value, that you value them, you're expecting them. And then make sure you have a staff or student ambassador kind of waiting for them at the door that you've highlighted, and can be kind of a service to them, just to really give that personal touch. One of the other things I found really effective is having a tour protocol as you do these, as school families are visiting your building. A couple of things that I found have worked out really well. One is I always like to have the principal visit with the family first. I know some schools will have somebody else do the tour and then they stop at the principal's office last. The reason I like having it first is it would give me as a principal time to make a connection with the family and really listen to what they need, want, what they're looking for, what the students' interests are, those types of things. Because then, as we started doing a tour, I could make sure I had a kind of an established tour route and talking points at different places, but I could customize that tour a little bit based on what they told me. So if we on a typical tour walked by the band room and we kind of peek in and move on, but if I know this student really is interested in band for next year, well, we're walking into the band room and we're going to talk to the band teacher. So I could, knowing that in advance before the tour allows me to really customize the tour to hit what they need. I also would close it by inviting the parents to take the next step in the process. If I felt like they were really, excited and they had gone through some of the steps already, one of the things, and it took me a while as a principal, it took me a year or two before I realized that, I wasn't really what they call asking for the sale. At the end of the tour, I never said, I really enjoyed getting to meet you. We would love to have Sally with us at our school next year. We think she'd really fit in. I think she'd find lots of friends. So it's really kind of making that final ask of, we want you here. We really would like to have you enroll in that. So that's another piece that could be really, real helpful. And then give them some swag while they're there. Give them a t-shirt, or maybe there's a special information piece or folder that you have to be able to give to them. The other thing that we found really effective is in that process is giving your teachers an opportunity to shine. And again, this is during a non-pandemic time, which we'll get back to eventually. But one of the things I always loved was I said, because they had already visited with me first in the office, I tell teachers, they've already talked to me. I've already talked to them. When we get into the classroom, I want them to fall in love with you as the teacher. I want them to get a sense of who you are and what you value, those types of things. So a couple of things that we would do is we worked out a deal with the teachers, and I would say, okay, I'm going to come around. We're going to enter your classroom. We're going to kind of just observe to the side until you get to a point where you feel like you can kind of stop or transition or something like that. And when you feel like you're kind of at a good point to pause, you walk over to us and introduce yourself. And when I'm introducing the family, if I've picked up any other little nuggets, I'm going to also give you some cues about them. So like let's say, for example, let's say a student really loves a particular author, and I know that this classroom does this amazing book study as part of their thing every year. I'm going to make sure I mention that to the teacher. This is little Janie. She was telling me about how much she loves books, and her favorite author is and that's going to cue the teacher to talk about that project. I'm kind of queuing them up, giving them an idea of, hey, here's some things that this family has told me is really important. And then my favorite part of this is when teachers are talking to a family, what's going through the back of their mind? They're worried about what all the other 20 kids are doing behind them, right? And are they going to make me look bad? Are they going to embarrass me because it's going to look like I don't have control of my classroom? So the deal we worked out was, teacher, when you come over and I introduce the family to you and I talk about what they're doing, then you're going to take over the conversation, and I am going to, as principal, fade into the background, and I am going to watch your kids. I'm going to engage the rest of your class. I'm going to talk to your class about what they're learning, ask them questions, keep them keep them on behavior and those types of things, so you don't have to worry about your class. I'm taking care of them, so you can focus your full attention on this family and making that connection, building that relationship with that family. This worked so well with our teachers. Our teachers loved it. It worked out really well with families. They really got a sense of who our teachers were and built that trust. Couple of ideas for you to showcase your school virtually in this year when you can't do things like tour and visit classrooms. And these are good for a pandemic year, but they might also be good for distance too. So if you have, again, military families that come to your area, if you have just other families that typically, if you have an area that has families move in often, that type of thing with like a corporate headquarters. These are some examples of things you can do to be able to help with that. So one of the things I want to just hit on is, having a teacher maybe record a mini virtual lesson with students. And one of the things that people get often, hesitant is, well, what about privacy rights for our students? So here's a couple of examples for you. If your teacher's doing a Zoom lesson, they're going to record a little snippet of. Ask each of your students, have the teacher ask the students to step to the side of their computer during the lesson and put their favorite stuffed animal on camera in their place. So they can still hear and talk and interact, but their face isn't on camera, their stuffed animal is. Or you could have them choose a photo of their favorite cartoon character or their favorite comic book hero, whatever, and use that as their avatar when their camera is off. And so they can have their camera off with their favorite avatar up and still engage virtually, and that will protect some of the privacy of your individual students. So there's some ideas, and may, again, a lot of times they have the name at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You can have them rename as well to protect their name and their anonymity. So a couple of ideas for that that you can do some virtual things with. The enrollment set of the cycle, we'll talk a little bit about that. And first, the most important part is think about things from the parent's perspective. Again, just like you were doing as you promoted to school and try to engage families, think about what is it like to be a parent enrolling in your school. Does it just feel like they're going through this bureaucracy? It's like, I'm filing paperwork at the Social Security Administration or the DMV, or do I feel like I'm actually building a relationship with the staff at the school? How clear is the process? Do they know who to contact with different questions? Are the forms done, do they have to fill out a separate form for each child, or are there some forms that can be streamlined by family? We have 5 children. And so I can tell you, there are times where it was very frustrating when you go to school and you're like, I had to fill out the same form 5 times. And the only thing that changed was the name and the grade, because all the other family information is the same. Is there a way to combine that maybe into one family form that again makes it a lot easier on parents? One of the reasons for that, just recently in this pandemic, the partnership schools in New York and Cleveland recently released some research findings that basically they found when they looked at their numbers, they lost 87% of their families if they were not fully enrolled within a week of initial outreach. Now, again, I've talked about moves management. So depending on the population you serve, some parents might be a little more deliberative, wanting to take extra time. Some families, particularly if they're in a more urban area, they might be used to just, I show up at my public school, I tell them I want to come, and a day or two later, my kid's going to school there. So their mindset might be different of this. And looking at, are there things that we create barriers to making them be able to enroll quickly? And one of the things they point out in a couple of those articles below are there some things we need like at admission time when they're enrolling, or there's some things we just need before the classes begin? Like, do we need all of their immunization forms in the spring, or do we just need immunization before they start in the fall? We just need it before they start, right? So thinking about how do we clear some of those barriers that keep families away, or might unintentionally convey that we're not a welcoming place. We also want to continue to acknowledge and keep in touch with families. If they enroll in the spring and you just kind of go on radio silence till August, that's too long. How can you keep in touch with them? So one would be to let parents know kind of when they can expect their next communication. In this case, there's a template also in the action planning guide of telling parents who you've just accepted, hey, here's the next steps. In this month, you can expect to hear from your building principal. In this month, you can hear from this. And so it kind of gives an idea of that. You might also want to consider a monthly new parent communication. And it could contain specific things, but really, since every family's only going to get this once in the year they're a new family, you could have some very evergreen content, right? So you could have maybe 1 month is about transitioning to a new school. Maybe 1 month is about faith development. Maybe 1 month is about making friends. Things that you reuse every year, because again, every family's only going to get it in their first year. They're not going to see it again. So that could be another way of keeping in touch with those families. In terms of retention, a couple of things. One is just to realize when you enroll a new family, at the time they enroll, your job of retention has just started. Being able to make sure that every experience they have cements that decision, makes them want to come back again. And so there are a couple of things you can do. One is we've found it very effective to have a new parent orientation before the general back to school night or school supply night. So new families have the building just to themselves. They might already, so that by the time everybody's in your building, they already feel comfortable. They know the building, they know some of your staff, they've met some other parents. So when everybody's there, they already feel comfortable with that. And I suggest a couple of things in that are, you might have the principal talk about just some nuts and bolts things like, where do you pick up and drop off? Those types of things. Have your home and school leaders talk about other like parent-to-parent things, like how do you buy the lunches? Where do you buy your uniforms? And what are some of the special events we have and things like that? How do I volunteer? All of those kinds of things. And then I loved having our pastor come. Most of the time, particularly if a family is not a member of our parish, they have probably never met the pastor at an open house or a tour or any of those other events, or Shadow Day, any of those other events. So this is a chance for them to meet the pastor. Again, they're only the new families meeting, and the pastor was able to talk about kind of the parents' role in education, how important they still are even after they're in school. How his goal was really to help every child grow closer to God. But if the children weren't Catholic, his job was not to try to convert them. So you put parents at ease with that and say, no, if you're a Methodist, I want your child to be a stronger and better Methodist Christian. If they, and I want to just help them grow closer to God in lots of ways. So that helped put parents at ease. And he would share with them his phone number and say, hey, call me, text me. If there's something we do at school that you don't understand, whether it's the sign of the cross or this month of the rosary or something, if there's something that it's particularly for non-Catholic families, it was really welcoming for the pastor to say, hey, look, I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to, if you're not sure about why we do something a certain way. So that was a really positive thing, again, particularly for our non-Catholic parents. We also want to, at re-enrollment time, really show that we value our current parents. So another great tool is there are some really easy ways to use mail merge to pre-populate your re-enrollment forms. So whether you use a student information system or an Excel spreadsheet, whatever, you can download it to an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can merge that onto your re-enrollment forms. Okay, there's nothing more irritating, I think, sometimes than, okay, I've been with this school for a year or maybe several years, and the school still sends me a blank form like they don't even know who I am. But if you send them a form where it's pre-populated, it's already got their name, their address, their phones, their workplace, their child's grade, all of that stuff on it, then all the parent has to do, first of all, it demonstrates like, hey, this school knows me. They value me. And it saves time, because it saves time for the parent, because all they have to do is review it and just cross out anything that's changed. If a phone number's changed, if a workplace has changed, that type of thing. It saves time on their end, which also makes it more likely that it's going to come back to you sooner. We know so many times forms just get stuck in a pile because they don't want to take the time. It's a lot of time to fill out all of the information. But if all I got to do is double check it, cross out a few things, and send it back, great. Save time on the parent's end, but it also saves time on your staff's end. Rather than getting back these handwritten forms where they've got to verify every piece of information against what's already in your system, all they have to do is look for the stuff that was crossed out and changed. So it made it much easier for our school staff, secretary, and things to look and say, oh, I just need to update this phone number for this family, and boom, it was done, that type of thing. The other one, I think it's important to show parents that we value them by kicking off re-enrollment by either providing some sort of a stated school address or a letter that thanks parents for their trust the past year, recaps what are the great things that have happened in the school this year, kind of gives them a preview. What are our goals for next year? What curriculum areas are we working on? What building improvements are we doing? All those types of things. And then also kind of gives them an honest look at finances and tuition too. If tuition has to increase, explaining why, and what are some of the costs that, whether it's salaries that need to get closer to public schools, which they always do, whether it's we're adding more technology, whatever the pieces are, kind of explaining why that tuition is where it is. All right, and then evaluation. We always want to do evaluation. So one is we want to track our conversion rates, right? How many families who come to a certain event actually end up enrolling? So we want to kind of just track that, because that'll help us determine how effective those events are. If we get really poor, like all these families come to open house and hardly any of them enroll, maybe we need to look at our open house. And maybe there's something our open house is not doing right, or we're conveying some messages we didn't intend to. So we can reevaluate and say, okay, let's revamp the open house for next year. You also want to be collecting information. First of all, I always suggest schools do exit interviews and surveys with families. Those can be really helpful. But here's the interesting one is, you know, a lot of times schools will look at their enrollment numbers from year to year and go, hey, you know, we only lost 2% of our students. But that doesn't mean you had a 98% retention. There could be a lot of ebb and flow within that 2%, of a lot of new families coming, a lot of families leaving. So you want to be paying attention to both of those. So paying attention to first the front door. Where are our students coming from? Whether it's at our entry level, whether it's kindergarten, preschool, or 9th grade. When we have students transfer in, where are they coming from? And then also, what grades do children tend to transfer in? Those are really important things for us to kind of get an idea of what are some of the trends that we can maximize and look at. But we also want to mind the exits too. We want to look at what grades are we losing students. You know, are they leaving the area? Maybe the family's moving away. That's not something we can control. But maybe they're selecting other schools, and that's something we need to be aware of. What's attracting them away from your school? So being able to look at both those things. How many, all the new people coming in, but also all the old people. So rather than rolling it up into one number of, we had a 2% enrollment claim, really dig into what do those numbers show and where are they coming from and going to. And I always suggest you debrief and keep notes right away at events immediately. So whether it's, you know, administrator working with staff or talking with teachers, as soon as you can afterwards say, okay, we just finished this event. What worked well? What do we want to change for next year? Were there some other things that you know came up that we hadn't anticipated? Because what happens is if you don't stop and write down these notes and put them back in that folder for that event, or what happens is next year you get to the event and you forgot what happened last year, and then you're in the middle of the event and you go, oh yeah, we weren't going to do that this year, but here we are, we're already stuck with it. So doing it while it's fresh can really help you plan and not repeat the same mistakes for next year. So I have thrown a lot of different ideas at you very quickly. I recognize that, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to give you the action planning guide. But I also wanted to help you continue to keep this conversation going. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, I've set up a Padlet Collaboration space, so it can be an ongoing idea bank. So feel free to add your ideas to it, react to other people's ideas, borrow ideas. It'll be up at least until July 8th, as long as all of the other convention materials are available to you. And I'll probably leave it up even beyond that, but I promise you we'll at least keep it up till then. So really giving you an opportunity to add ideas and borrow ideas. And then in addition to the Padlet, so the Padlet Collaboration space here is on the right, that link. On the left is the link to download the action planning guide. And I really encourage you to do that. It's, again, a 17-page, covers a lot of the material I talked about here, plus a lot of new other ideas, and also gives you some templates as well to be able to enact in your school. The action planning guide also contains my email address, phone number, contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I can do to provide some more context or ideas, or if you have other ideas, again, you can contribute those to the Padlet space as well. And I really look forward to seeing all of the great ideas that you're coming up with in the field and sharing with each other as we continue to all build on this common mission of trying to boost Catholic school enrollment and retention, especially in a pandemic. So thank you all very much. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I hope you enjoy all of the rest of the NCA virtual content. Have a great day.